welcome to ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Chandra Shrikant, joining you live from India's startup capital, Bangalore. And as always, we have a power-packed show lined up for you over the next 20 minutes. But first up, the headlines. We kick off a new segment on the show today, Valley Direct, where Venki Ganesan of Menlo Ventures will take us through all the goings-on in the Silicon Valley and the larger implications that this has for India. Trouble at the helm for analytics giant New Sigma as founder Dheeraj Rajaram and CEO Ambika Rajaram split. Search giant Google is non-committal about the tax that kicks in tomorrow, which will make a levy on every payment that goes out from any payment from an Indian company to a non-resident entity that provides online advertising services. Regulatory hurdles continue for cab aggregators in Karnataka, where the government had directed Ola and Uber to stop operations. 3 days into the diktat, both continue to operate cabs, upsetting the transport department. Straight to the top story then, and as we promised, we kick off a new segment on ET Now Startup Central. We are calling it Valley Direct because this is coming straight from Silicon Valley. We will have a monthly segment with Venki Ganesan of Menlo Ventures, who will take us through all the trends that you need to keep abreast of in the heart of innovation and starting up, and that's Silicon Valley, and the broader implications that this will have for the Indian startup ecosystem. Venki Ganesan, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Bay Area. I want to start by asking you about the broad investment trend, at least that we've seen here in India. You know, Series A has been steadily coming down, but at the same time, seed funding has gone up and has even surpassed Series A in many cases. Is this part of a global trend, you know, something that's just happening in India? What is your own take?
So VCs all over the world are taking a wait and watch attitude. In Q1, there's a lot of macroeconomic issues, and there have also been some late stage unicorn companies that have been blowing up. But I think as the year rolls on, you will see that seed and Series A investments is going to pick up. It's mostly the late stage investments that are going to suffer. So I am more optimistic that as the year goes on, you're going to see more Series A investment, even in India, definitely in the US.
Venki, you know, one company and one CEO that's been in the news constantly in the internet space is, of course, Yahoo and its CEO, Marissa Mayer. Many people are really criticizing her for a failure to turn around the company and spending a lot of money in the process. What is your own assessment of her term so far?
Turnarounds are really difficult. We tend to think when Steve Jobs did it at Apple, so anybody should do it. But Steve Jobs is a once in a decade, once in a generation kind of entrepreneur. I think Marissa got a very tough hand dealt to her. She's tried to do the best she can, but ultimately it's very hard to move a big ship like Yahoo and turn it around. So I think Marissa gave it her best, and that's all one can hope for. But I think it was always a very difficult thing to do.
Venki, and one startup, you know, which was previously hot and which is now under fire is, of course, Theranos. A lot of people are now blaming investors in Silicon Valley for really not doing enough due diligence and, you know, getting swept away by the unicorn trend. Again, you know, is this a hard lesson for investors in the Valley?
Well, this is a lesson that happens in every upcycle. I think in an upcycle, people tend to get sloppy. They tend to do less due diligence. And we always have a fame blowout like this. If you go back to the 1990s, we had WorldCom and Enron as big potential fraud misrepresentation. I don't know the exact details on Theranos, but it's very clear that this company was overhyped and the technology is not working. Unfortunately, I think this is what happens in upcycles. My sense is that people will learn from this. We should not take too much into failures. I mean, failures are a part of life. So whenever I see the media focus too much on it, I try to caution, look, out of failures come the next great innovation. Think about the Newton, which was a big failure for Apple, but the Newton allowed Apple to build the iPhone. So failures are a part of life. What we need to do is to learn from them and make sure we make new mistakes, not old ones.
Venki, and a lot of Silicon Valley imports in India, be it the chief product officer at Flipkart, Snapdeal, they have quit in recent weeks. Is this a sign that perhaps the culture here, the startup ecosystem here is not mature enough and they're really not conducive enough to building a product culture, or that, they're just not giving these guys enough time? What is your own reading into these high-profile exits?
It's a great question. Now, culture is not like instant noodles where you can just add people and throw some water and in 2 minutes have your food, right? It takes a long time to build and integrate people. I always felt that this influx of people from Silicon Valley to startup in India is not going to end well because we have two different cultures. The culture of doing business in India and building a company in India is different than the culture in Silicon Valley. Not better, just different. And it takes time for that integration to happen and for that marriage to happen. You can't just add people, add water and make it do. I think some of the cultural issues you're seeing is exactly that. I think in the long run, I am very optimistic about India's startup situation. I am very optimistic there are going to be some very big companies formed out of India. But in the short run, I do think that there are going to be challenges at some of the big e-commerce companies, and that the notion of importing talent from Silicon Valley and trying to see if that can work, I think is going to have a mixed result.
There's also been a series of markdown and valuations that e-commerce companies here have seen. I mean, Flipkart has seen its 5th markdown in the last few weeks. Should one really take these markdowns very seriously by mutual funds, or is it just a theoretical exercise? How serious should these markdowns be?
I think they're two separate issues. I think too much is made of whether a mutual fund is marking up or marking down an investment. And you got to understand that the valuation process for a mutual fund is driven by auditors and driven by the audit process, which is very different. So I don't read too much into whether Fidelity or T. Rowe Price marks up an investment or marks down an investment. The only valuation that matters is the exit valuation. All the interim valuations don't matter. So that's one issue. Separate issue is just what's going to happen with some of these late-stage e-commerce companies in India. I think the reality is their valuations have been significantly ahead of reality. You can only give other people's money away for so long before people stop giving it to you. I think eventually they're going to find a way to build a profitable, sustainable business. I definitely hope they will, and I am sure they will. And until that happens, though, the valuations are going to be volatile.
Venki, finally, before we wrap up, any other trends from the Silicon Valley in the last month that we should really look forward to?
Well, I think Google I/O happened, and I think it's fantastic to see how Google is continuing to make progress. I think what Sundar has laid out, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, is his vision about how AI is central. I think that is probably a very big theme, the notion of using artificial intelligence and machine learning and incorporating it in all facets of technology. I am very optimistic about it. I also think that while we might hear in the news all these up and down valuations in the late stage, it's a pretty exciting time to do early stage investing. We ourselves at Menlo Ventures have been focused on drones. We just invested in a fantastic company called D-Drone. And we've been investing in a Wi-Fi company called Eero. So I think there are opportunities to build really big companies right now, and we are very excited about that opportunity.
Right. Venki Ganesan, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Silicon Valley in this new segment, Valley Direct. And we look forward to having you every month right here on ET Now Startup Central. Thanks for that. But moving on from that, and Venki mentioned Google, but Google's in news in India for a different reason altogether, because starting tomorrow, the government will start taking a levy on every payment that goes out from an Indian company that crosses 1 lakh for online advertising services to a non-resident entity. Now remember, Google has been the biggest beneficiary of the e-commerce boom because of the huge surge that this has led to in terms of online advertising and digital advertising. We caught up with Google India's director, Nitin Bawankule. We began by asking him about the insights from a Google Kearney study on digital retail in India, and we of course also asked him about this all-important Google tax. Take a listen.
Consumer interest is very high, and this industry from $15 billion last year will go to $60 billion at least by 2020. So 4x growth in the GMV. That's the first message. So, and it will be 25% of the overall organized retails. That's the first message. I think the second message which came out very clearly was that the number of shoppers currently, which is pegged at around 50 million shoppers online, will go to 175 million in the next 5 years. So that's more than 3x in the next 5 years.
As far as the FDI and marketplaces norms are concerned, a lot of the top e-tailers are also saying that they don't track GMV as a metric anymore. So how did that really influence your study, and did you have to really reassess the data or the metrics that you were using during the course?
So very clearly the growth rate is slowing down, not primarily because of any discounting or changes in FDI, I think, but I think one, the industry is maturing, and as the rapid growth which we saw over the last 5 years will definitely not continue because the industry is maturing over, the consumers are realizing the benefits of that. I think the FDI regulation really does not change anything, because what's happened is most of the players in this...
Even in terms of, the curb on discounts?
So I think the curb on discounts, I don't know whether FDI regulation is the reason for curb on discounts. I think as such, most of the players had realized that this discounting is not going to help them to retain the consumer. It is not sustainable. It's not the profitable way of growth. So we'll see a sizable growth. So if you really see 50 million to 175 million is 3x growth in shoppers. 15 billion to 60 billion is 4x growth in GMV, which I think is a very sizable growth despite whatever hurdles if you are talking about.
Right. And your thoughts on the Google tax which is kicking off tomorrow? The ministry has just given a notification.
So honestly, we came to know about it yesterday. So we are just thinking about it. We'll let you know in the next few days.
Finally, any risks that you see in the projections that you've given today? Any risks? Because we are already seeing the market becoming very subdued now, funding coming down, and there is a talk of consolidation taking off big time. So any risks that you see to the current model?
So if you ask me if you ask me whether there is a risk to the number which you have called, I don't think so, because I think what we have called are numbers which are very practical. It's on the basis of consumer feedback. As I clearly said, irrespective whether there is a discount or not, consumers will still shop primarily because of the assortment, convenience, and a wide range of brands which are available. So I think from a numbers perspective, I don't see a risk. The only risk which can be there just in case is if the infrastructural challenges continue in India, which are like, for example, if telecom network still doesn't take off.
Or if the mobile penetration doesn't.
Yeah, so that can be a risk, but otherwise I don't think so. But we are very confident
apart
that...
from broad insights, any specific insights that you also drew in terms of, the companies or the way the market share has evolved?
So I wouldn't talk about market share of the companies, but I would say if you had to ask me specific insights, I would say the categories are going to be very defining. One, obviously, baby care and lifestyle. Second is beauty and cosmetics. I think these two categories, and the third is obviously home furnishings and furniture. These categories, whoever is in these three categories is going to grow rapidly over the next 3 to 5 years.
Right. Interesting to hear that perspective from Google, but I'm really wondering, how much of a dampener that tax is going to be, because it will not just apply to Google, it will also apply to the others such as Facebook and Twitter. Facebook in particular has become a big forum as far as advertising and sponsored posts are concerned. But moving on to that, to a sad piece of news coming in from the Indian unicorn space, and we are talking about data analytics company Mu Sigma here, because the founder couple Dheeraj Rajaram and Ambika Rajaram, who play the role of chairman and CEO respectively, apart from husband and wife, have split. They have confirmed the divorce that came through a couple of days back. Now, for now, both of them say that, they continue to be motivated to run Mu Sigma together, but it's always difficult when there's a split at the founder level, and especially if it involves a married couple. We do not know, what contingency plans there are in place and what will happen to the shareholding eventually, because remember, promoters control 48% of Mu Sigma now. They have over 4,000 employees. I guess this is a space that we will be tracking closely going forward as well. On from that to our final major news story of the day, where we are talking about cab aggregators Ola and Uber, who continue to face the brunt in Karnataka. Remember, over the weekend, the Transport Department had said that they will ask them to stop operations unless they apply for a proper license. Now, 3 days into that threat, Ola and Uber continue to operate, but Rahul Dama caught up with Karnataka's Transport Commissioner Ramegara to really find out what the course of action will be and what solution this problem really has, and if Ola and Uber have complied.
Saturday, we issued a circular stating that those who are not obtained permit license, they should stop the operation. That is illegal operation. Since our rule is on and everybody should register, who they want to continue their operation, they should have been registered under our aggregator rules. So that's the main issue is security measures. And then second is the number of vehicles and accidents of the drivers. And the other thing is they have to give back guarantee. If anything goes wrong or if any eventuality has, they will be held responsible. So that's why we are insisting, let them register under our aggregator rules.
Sure.
So what happened, the same day, they think towards evening, Ola brought some documents. So for around 100 cabs. So next day, Uber, they have brought 129 cabs particulars without verifying police incidents of the drivers. So I told them clearly that they have to be verified, then only this thing will be renewed. So they are at it, then let them do it.
So will you extend the deadline, sir, or will that enforcement, because both of them are still continuing to operate cabs?
Since they are doing, let them do it. Let them do it, let them certainly submit immediately. Okay.
Right. So till they submit documents, they can continue with their operations?
No, that's illegal. They should stop operation and then they should submit.
How long will this procedure take, sir? They have applied, inspection is going on. On an average, how many days or weeks will this take?
An hour or so. If they give company, this thing, all documents, it will be issued by circulation. Will issue permit or this thing license. There will not be any delay.
With that, we come to the final segment of the day, Number Crunch. And the number we are crunching for you today is 2,000. That's the number of items that legendary footballer Pele is going to auction. And, that's really from his professional career as a footballer. Now, these 2,000 items contain everything from sports and cultural memorabilia that Pele has accumulated over the decades. And it's going to be auctioned off over 3 days in next month in London. So I guess if you are a football fan, more specifically a Pele fan, I guess that's the place you need to be to collect a piece of Pele, literally. But with that, we come to the end of this edition of ET Now Startup Central. Keep it with ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.